Yeah.
We're moving on. Hitting up Slater Kinney again. This is their album Dig Me Out. And in the opening montage, you heard Dig Me Out. And now you're going to hear Turn It On. Okay, so Dig Me Out by Sleater Kinney comes in at number 227 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 24 in 1997, number 1,206 of all time. It is Sleater Kinney's second highest rated album, behind 2005's The Woods. Dig Me Out did make Rolling Stone's list at number 189, and Sleater Kinney is ranked, where are they overall ranking? 379 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. So we previously covered them with the 1996's Call the Doctor. That was this current season, season 4, episode 47. Dig Me Out is their third studio album, which was released on April 8th, 1997. And this is considered their breakthrough album. Mainly, it saw the addition of their new drummer, Janet Weiss, who would become the band's longest tenured drummer. As she we're now getting Sleater Kinney, the classic lineup with the two guitarists and vocalist Carrie Brownstein and Corin Tucker, along with Janet Weiss on drums. This was something that both Brownstein and Tucker spoke of pretty highly in regards to Weiss and her addition to the band. Brownstein described her as one of the most musically intelligent people I know, and certainly the most musically gifted member of the band, the one with the largest musical lexicon and sphere from which to draw influence and reference, while Tucker said musically, she's completed our band, she's become the bottom end and the solidness that we've really wanted for our songwriting. So this was kind of a big addition for the band. They were I think they had maybe 3 or 4 different drummers here and there previously, but this is, Janet Weiss was definitely the one that kind of completed the circle, if you will. So on this record, they worked with producer John Goodmanson, and they left the previous label Chainsaw Records, and they signed on with Kill Rock Stars. We recently covered Elliott Smith, who was also signed to Kill Rock Stars, as was Bikini Kill, another album that we covered a little while ago. They had a good amount of studio time for this record, which that was provided by the label, which they kind of, despite the label's small size, they were giving them, more time in the studio than they were used to. Not like anything ridiculous like Def Leppard Hysteria stuff, but like so they were definitely able to flesh out some ideas and work in the studio more than they were in the past. Goodmanson noted that on this record, and probably a lot of Sleater Kinney stuff, that there's no bass actually. It's just the 2 guitars and the drummer. And he found that was an advantage for the album's production, explaining that, quote, "The awesome thing about having no bass player is you can make the guitar sound as big as you want. Usually you have to clear all that room out for the bass so you can hear the bass line. With no bass there, you can just go for giant guitar sounds that you wouldn't normally be able to go for." So lots of big guitar sounds here. The second track on this record, One More Hour, is actually about the breakup of Corin Tucker and Carrie Brownstein and their romantic relationship. We talked a little bit about that they had been, romantically involved for a period of time, but around this time, this is kind of like their breakup record, and that song in particular does cover that topic. Before the release of the record, Spin Magazine actually published an article about Brownstein and Tucker's relationship without their permission, and essentially it outed them, which they did not take too kindly. Brownstein talked about how her parents didn't even know she was dating women, so this is kind of how they found out. So she wasn't terribly happy with Spin Magazine for doing that. But her family, she said, good news, her family was cool, so everybody was cool with it, but like it was definitely not her decision. It wasn't done on her terms. The title of the album was inspired by the fact that the band had to literally dig out of the recording studio after a heavy snowstorm that took place in the winter of 1996 in Seattle. And the cover of this album, I didn't know about this. I'm sure Josh doesn't. John, you might be the only person that has any idea about what this cover is an homage to. Did it ring any bells for you at all?
No. I
Okay.
don't. Hmm.
Well, the cover is an homage to the Kinks' 1965 album cover, The Kink Controversy. So if you look up that album cover, it's basically the same thing. It's a big. The main picture is like of a guitar, and then there's the four members up top and blocks up on top. So this is a direct homage to the Kinks. But that's kind of early Kinks. We did more stuff in later Kinks stuff, but. So there you go. So that's all I got on them. I think we might be covering them again. So I'm kind of stopping there. And I think John, it's your turn to go first. What did you think this time around? I think you were a fan of the last record called The Doctor. What'd you think of Dig Me Out?
Yeah, so Slater Kinney's a very interesting one for me because they feel like a band I should know more about sonically because they fit into so many of the lanes of music that I enjoyed and was listening to around this time, but somehow they just sort of slipped under my radar for a long time. And really, Matt, it wasn't until we were in grad school together in the mid 2000s that you talked about how much you enjoyed their albums that I kind of gave them a listen to. So I credit you a little bit with turning me on to them. And at that point, I was listening to them real time. I was kind of jumping in where they were at. So I didn't fully go all the way back to this era of Slater Kinney. I kind of stayed more in the contemporary releases. So I'm much more familiar from around 2005 to now with what they were, or 2005 to the end of when they stopped making albums together with their discography. So this is kind of like a little bit of a fun journey. Now we did do the album before this, and
Call
I
the
felt
Doctor.
the Cult Doctor, exactly. And I felt like that one had glimmers of what I liked, but I think my takeaway was there is a little bit of a barrier vocally at times. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel it as much this album as I did on the first one. Not really because they changed anything about how they sang or how they did vocals. I think it was more just, I do think the more you listen to them and the more exposure you get to it, the more the initial jarringness of their vocals goes away and you're able to, for me at least, and I know Josh had mentioned that the vocals were a little challenging for him at times too, but I'll be interested to see if you feel the same way. But kind of once I'm able to just put them in their right place, what the vocals sound like, I'm able to then dig into what I think is the real strength of their sound, and the strength of this album is the guitar work. There's a very classic, almost punk rock feel to the guitar lines they lay down. It's garage rocky as well. Like, if we even go back to like the 60s, right? And it's interesting they picked the Kinks, right, to model their album cover off of, because I do see a little bit of, the stuff that would be on that Artifacts collection of music from the 60s of what their song, their music sounds like. It almost sounds even a little surf rocky at times, but very much also modern indie and an evolution of what the 2000s sound like as well at different points. It's got Riot Girl in it as well, which I picked up on last time, but I felt this album would have fit nicely in the Riot Girl genre as well. I don't mean to belittle the emotions on this, because I could tell it was a very personal album, knowing that it's about their own breakup. Like, two members of the group is an interesting twist on that, because it does feel lyrically, as I was listening and revisiting the lyrics, like a breakup album sonically. You wouldn't necessarily get it though from like what it sounds like as a guitar album, and I think you could actually miss it entirely if you're just listening to it as a guitar album. I think what I noticed on this one that I was aware of, but became very pronounced, was you said, Matt, that they do not have a bassist, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and that's something I noticed this time around. I'm like, there is no bass part on any of these songs. And once I realized that, it's kind of a revolutionary like thing, because I listen to music. The first thing I listen to in music is there a bass line or not? And unlike something like Boredoms, right, where, there aren't bass lines a lot of times. That's what the album we covered before this, for those that may be listening to this many, many years later, right? But something like Boredoms, there isn't a bass line, so I immediately go to percussion, right? Like that's where I go next. But I filter through that and then I end with vocals and drums as a listening experience. When you are listening to rock music that usually has a bass part and it doesn't have a bass part, this time around I was like, holy shit, like this is an interesting experience to me, because I think without having the bass part, I actually think I jumped the drums, as odd as that sounds. I just went right to the guitar and vocals, which I feel like to some degree you guys have told me that's a little bit more like your order of operations, but it isn't. And I don't want to speak for you. I could be wrong about that.
No, you're right.
But
you're definitely right. Yeah, for me.
And Matt, is that yours as well? Like guitars first?
Guitars typically are the first thing that Mm-hmm.
Right. So I felt like this is one of the few albums where I was listening to the album like you guys do too. So it became a very guitar forward album for me. And because I like the guitar in it, I think it really colored my view of this album. So when you throw in that, I think very emotive, relatable lyrics about the end of a relationship mixed with good guitar lines and my lower barrier to entry with singing, I like this album. It was a thumbs up for me. And if you had told me that like I would like a rock album that didn't have a bass part as much as I like this album, I would be surprised. So credit to them that they're able to construct an album in a traditional like band format without one of the pieces being cut out. It's really interesting. It's like, can you even do a rock band the other ways, like not have percussion? Or you can certainly do it without singing, but
Right.
You can't really do it without lead guitar, and you can't really do it without drums. I guess bass would be the only place. And I would have guessed you couldn't make rock music without bass. But I was wrong.
I would probably say that there's parts in this though that where even though technically there's not a bass, they still can use a guitar to fill in a bass.
Well, and they're playing the guitar as bass parts. Yeah,
right.
It's
right.
kind
but
of
it's
what
not
the bass drum. Yeah, too.
But,
well, the drum is
yeah.
The drum serves as the rhythm section, right? And that the drum can carry a rhythm section. It can serve as a rhythm section, and also, but you only really ever see that in like experimental rock, right? Not something that's this in every other way, right? Like aligned with indie, right? You know what I mean? You just don't see many people dropping the bass part. So anyway, that was another takeaway that I had. So thumbs up on this one for me.
Yeah, I really like this album, and I liked it more the more I listened to it. I definitely liked it more than the Call the Doctor. You know, to your point, like, yeah, Corin Tucker still has kind of that abrasive, unique voice, but I, like you, John, I kind of got over it pretty quickly. I feel like, I don't know if they're just playing to their strengths more, or they're crafting songs differently, or what, but I feel like it fit perfectly into what they were trying to do, especially with the kind of that Riot Girl attitude. The thing I like about this album is I feel like it's got some like pop tinge to it, like in the song construction or the little things that they do. You know, like in a chorus or on Turn It On, they add like hand claps, or even on a song towards the end, like or like Lil Babies. That's almost like that's kind of got like this retro feel to it as well in the chorus. I feel like I'd heard that song before too. But or they add like at the end of the album, Dance Song 97, they add like tambourine, and there's like this little keyboard part on the bridge that's interesting to that. And so they do all these things, and I found myself really liking almost every song on this album. And at times, like even like kind of singing along to myself, or I just kind of like the rhythm of Corin Tucker's voice at times too, with like certain songs like on Hearts Factory or Words and Guitar. It just kind of got this like, it's high pitched, but it's got this like lilting rhythm. The way that she's singing on the songs is very interesting. It's still first and foremost a rock album, which I really like. Obviously I respond to that. And I really feel like from the last album, they just kind of refined their sound more ultimately. It's funny you say about the bass line, because I didn't really even like think about that. And then like, I don't know, maybe I was just creating the bass line in my head or something. Like I was just fully on board with kind of where they were going on this album. And right from the jump, and then all the way to the last song, Jenny, which kind of takes has like a weird, like darker tone and kind of shifts from their sound. I feel like they kind of do different things on this album and are flexible in that respect. So yeah, I really like this album. It's got me excited to hear like later stuff. This is one of their, I mean, based on what Matt said about the rankings, like this is one of their higher rated albums. So, yeah, this was a good one for me this week. This was my album of the week actually as well.
Yeah. So this is the album that got me into Slater Kinney. I might have mentioned this the last time I covered them, but I the first time I ever heard about them, I bought this album for my buddy, and he gave me his copy of The Wall. So, so we were like in a record store, and he was like, I don't even know how that came about, but basically that's ended up what happening. So we decided to give me the copy of The Wall, and I was like, all right, I'll buy you this record. So I was like, and it wasn't until like, a couple of years later that I, even, just ventured out, like, let me just get that album that Josh was so into. Like, what was that about, right? Mm-hmm. So I totally agree that there is a barrier, right? If you're not used to Corinne Tucker, even if you're kind of into like louder music or harder music or punk or whatever, like distinct voices, her voice definitely stands out, right? Her voice is definitely one of those ones that's kind of like, I can get right away why someone would be put off by that vocal side. It's kind of, there's certainly with like Dylan's another one. I can see people like Neil Young, right? Billy Corgan, like these people and I throw Corinne Tucker in there, because it is this kind of like, it's a jarring, vocal style. And so, yeah, initially it's kind of like, oof, I don't know, but once, it didn't take me too long to get past that. But once I did, like, I ended up really liking it. And, and in other albums, Carrie Brownstein does her fair share of singing too. And there's similarities in their vocal stylings, but there's definitely, this seems to have some of the most Corinne Tucker moments that Corinne Tucker can have, it's just like,
yeah.
That she can have, like Words and Guitar is a great example of that. It's just when she's belting out that part of Turn It On towards the end where she's just like basically losing it, which is one of my favorite moments, not just on this record, but on Slater Kinney's entire catalog. Mm-hmm. That's one of my top songs. That's just, I love that track. And so, yeah, it's just, there's so much that I like about this record. It's got a ton of edge, first and foremost, right? So it's definitely kind of keeping you on your toes, but there's lots of melody peppered throughout this. And I really love both how they play the guitars against each other, the two guitar parts, how they play, because they're usually playing pretty distinctive parts. One that's more of a kind of a rhythm, the other one's more of like a melody, and I just think that they do a great job there, and they trade off like in their vocals. Even though Corinne Tucker's vocals stand out most, she's probably taking on more of the upfront vocals. Carrie Brownstein's right behind her there with some great backing vocals and taking the lead as well sometimes. So, but just great melody, and some deeper cuts, like Things You Say has just got a really cool. The melody in that chorus is great. The driving opening track of Dig Me Out, just that's a great guitar sound. Dance Song 97 has this cool little like that little guitar. You're right, John. There's some surf rock in here. I never really considered that a lot with Slater Kinney, but there's definitely moments in here you're like, yeah, it's kind of got this surf rock component to it as well. So it's kind of interesting that that Brownstein and Tucker kind of credit Janet Weiss for really kind of like honing their sound, because a lot of the credit, a lot of what I'm saying here is for those two. So I don't know exactly, they're all attributed to writing the music for this. It's like all music composed by Slater Kinney. So I don't know how much, who contributed what in what way. But clearly, for Brownstein and Tucker, that, the addition of Janet Weiss was really helped form the band into what they would become. So, So yeah, they start to branch out more. I definitely think we should cover. If you guys like these first two ones, I think we should cover other ones because it's not. I think that these records in the early years are pretty raw, and I think that they delve a little bit more into different sounds and instruments and other records. So that's something to look out for. Oddly enough, Josh, you mentioned something about keys. There's actually no keys on this. The only other instrument aside from guitars, drums, and vocals is a saxophone part on "It's Enough," which I did not. I'm like, where's the sax? Like, it's so buried. Apparently, there's a saxophone.
Yeah.
In "It's Enough." So there is that. But
well, I don't know what I heard then because it's almost like a theremin or something.
It's probably just a guitar.
Yeah.
It's like whatever they're filtering the guitar through, whatever amp that they're using there, so the sounds that they're doing. So I mean, obviously, certainly somebody like Tom Morello shows all the different sounds you can make with a guitar. Right now, they're clearly not doing stuff that he's doing, but that's that. It's a very stripped down record. It's a lot of energy. A lot of people talk. A lot of the critics were talking about the feminism, the girl power kind of like thematic elements to this. And certainly the music is really in your face, but it's also melodic. It's really energetic, and it breezes through. It's 36 minutes, 13 songs. So in true kind of punk fashion, it kind of just does its thing and then gets out. So, but the more I've listened to this group and over the years, the more I've liked them. They have so many elements of things that I like and respect. And they kick ass. So, and they're fun live. I've seen them live a couple of times too, so I recommend that. But yeah, big thumbs up for me. It's been a while since I've listened to this record, and I really enjoyed going back